Said that I just wish to bring to the attention of the public. There are two policies and projects that would be taking place in the very near future, within the next few months, that the Trinidad and Police Service will be involved in to assist us in trying to reduce crime by trying to infiltrate into areas not by the use of the firearm or by the fist, but by the use of the handshake and working with young persons. The first has to do with the Commissioner's Cup. The Commissioner's Cup, so some persons would recall that it started last year. The second edition of the NLCB Commissioner's Cup will begin on Friday, August the 7th. And because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the public health ordinance regulations, we will have a shortened version of the tournament. Although the tournament would be shortened, there will be no shortage of talent. Unlike the format of 2019, when there were numerous police youth clubs engaged, this year the tournament will feature the 9 police divisions. And so there will be 9 teams. And before the division can select its team, there will be a screening process supervised by some former and present Trinidad and Tobago national footballers. There will be 16 matches in the preliminary stage, followed by semi-finals and finals. All the games will be played at the best football field in the country at this time, which is the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service North Ground. The tournament will be for players 18 years and under. And what we are hoping to do as well is to try to utilize this to see if we can acquire scholarships for young persons to get into the United Kingdom, which also will help develop the young persons. Additionally, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service will also be establishing a project known as Crossroads, where we will be acquiring 1,000 police officers to work with 1,000 young men and women. We are working with the Ministry of Education and the Children's Court, whereby we will be finding young persons who sometimes may need some guidance, some support. And rather than for them to be used by gang members, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we intend to have that Big Brother campaign, whereby through the Ministry of Education and through the Children's Court, young persons who we believe can turn around, using police officers to be a big brother, to be with that person, mentor him, his role model, socializing with him, and trying to get him to turn away from where it is he might go. And again, it always goes with the saying, narrow is the path that leads to righteousness and broad is the way that leads to destruction. So we hope that we can lead young persons into that path of righteousness. I will now go into, just for information purposes, the gender-based violence unit. As we spoke about recently, it has proven to be very successful trying to deal with the problems we have with domestic violence. We have seen this actually going into Parliament now, where there's certain things that can greatly assist the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in this type of crime being reduced. I can say that one of the things, it seemed that it may have been lost last week in the very intense media conference, but again, I want to re-emphasize the importance, and it is done internationally, and I do hope that consideration can be looked at into the concept whereby victims, and on many occasions, victims will be reluctant to come forward and give information, and probably because of fear of reprisal or just fear. And however, there have been a number of occasions where the victims must go to a medical facility, whether it be private or public. And with that medical facility, it means that persons who are in the private or the public sector, they would be getting these reports and will be seeing that these persons have been a victim of domestic violence. I am strongly making a recommendation for consideration to be given, similar to other countries, that it is mandatory for these medical institutions to, when it is that they get this information, they do not just keep it and have it filed, but they must come forward and have this information brought to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The reports from these medical institutions, it is not just for domestic violence, but also we are asking that it makes it mandatory for all medical institutions to come forward and give information as it pertains to shootings, stabbings, domestic violence related crime, child abuse, and sexual offenses. However, I do believe in my little expertise as a politician. I think it would require that special majority. But again, I think it is something that is critical because it can find an avenue to ensure that we can go after the perpetrator even without the victim bringing forward the information to the police. As it pertains to the bail amendment, and we have spoken about this at length, again, I want to stress of the importance of that bail amendment bill. But it is more than just bail amendment to assist us in trying to reduce crime. I go back into the situation where 7,600 persons have been arrested over the last 5 years for possession of a firearm. But almost everyone, they were released within 24 hours. And if it is that they were eventually sentenced and found guilty, they will be given the terrible fine or sentence of $5,000 to go back out onto the streets to probably get another firearm to do the same thing. It cannot continue. So it is much more than the bail amendment bill, because on the 121st day, even if the bail amendment bill comes forward, on the 121st day, the individual will get back out onto the streets. As mentioned, with 7,600 being arrested over the last 5 years, we're speaking about 4 persons every week the police arrest for an illegal firearm. The firearms do not kill people. It's the individuals who have the firearms. So if we have about 500 to 700 shooters, as we have based on our intelligence, it means that these individuals have been arrested again and again and again. And it cannot be that we keep doing the same thing and expect different results. But then after, when the crime rate goes up, you blame the police. If rain falls, you blame the police. It goes back to the point that it is more than just the bail amendment bill. I strongly recommend that we have something along the line of a gun court, and also making sure that there's a minimum sentence. France, Belgium, Germany, United Kingdom, Australia, the sentence for someone with a firearm can be as much as 5 to 10 years for a sidearm. And let's not talk about an assault rifle, which in some countries it is deemed as a terrorist attempt. So I strongly recommend that it is much more than just the bail amendment, but ensuring that we have a gun court to ensure that there's swift justice, that we can have these matters brought to court immediately when persons are held, and then that there's a minimum sentence. Those 500 odd shooters, if we could get them where they belong, it will play a very big part towards the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service adhering to our objective. Again, it goes back to the illegal weapons we have in this country. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we would seize over 1,000 weapons per annum. And again, we know the road march that we have heard, that the problem we have is the illegal ports of entry. I wish to state that intelligence has now been brought to our attention and confirmed that the vast majority of the legal firearms that enter the country, it is not from the illegal ports of entry, but from the legitimate ports of entry. If you look at North America, for example, anything that enters North America, say the Miami port, it is thoroughly checked. They look at every single splinter in the container and the crate before it leaves Miami port. Sorry, when it arrives at the Miami port. Anything that leaves, they really don't care much, because it is leaving the United States. It's leaving North America. If it lands here, the onus is now on us to make sure we have a foolproof system to prevent illegal weapons and drugs entering the country through the legitimate ports of entry. So my point is, if there are 1,000 firearms that we seize annually, if it is that just one container, one crate, can probably bring 2 times that amount in just one night. And it will leave the port, get onto the streets, and when these thousands of firearms are distributed throughout the country and they use these firearms to kill persons, guess who is blamed again? My point is, if we are being blamed, I think we have a situation with scanners being on the port, and we are aware of what the clear and present danger is, which is the legitimate ports of entry. This is not to take away the importance of what is being done by the Ministry of National Security, inclusive of the police being an arm of the Ministry of National Security, in dealing with preventing illegal entry of weapons, drugs, and human trafficking from the South American mainland. But the point being is that the weapons that have become the tool of choice for most of the persons who commit violent crime, especially murders, that we need to find a way to lock down our ports to prevent these weapons entering the country by leaving the ports. Are the scanners being used? Do we have a proper system to ensure that we can prevent it? The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, just for information, we have absolutely no authority, no input, no involvement in the ports whatsoever. Our involvement only comes in as soon as the containers leave the gate and it gets out onto the street. We can't then search every container after it leaves the port. So is it that we need to have some degree of involvement of the police service inside of the ports to assist us to be able to deal with our job? Because we can't just deal with it after the weapons just come back out onto the streets. I now move on to the comments that I have seen recently by very few regarding my concern about the deafening silence of a 2-year-old child that was killed recently. What was said by a few persons, it really sums up what I have seen in our nation. And I can go back to just several months ago when the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, based on heavy intelligence and doing what was required to protect lives, when dozens of elderly women and others were in cages like animals. They were like virtual slaves. And when the police rescued these persons, the biggest debate, the biggest comment was to understand what is the definition of trafficking. That became the headlines. What is the definition of trafficking? Not the concern that we had reached in our society where elderly persons were being put in cages, were being put as slaves, and there was not a tear shed, no concern. The biggest news was, what is the definition of trafficking? And that's what we have reached as a society. And we can throw right back to this situation recently, where again, I have seen the hypocrisy. And when I asked about where's the concern, where's the anger, is it that the concern and anger only comes out when police are involved in shootings? A group tried to do the same thing. They listened to what I said, and they decided to utilize the death of a 2-year-old child to try to use it as a front to promote other aspects. And the mother was quite right. They were out of place. My point being is that we can't be two-sided. There's a saying that you cannot be half pregnant. Is it that we only have anger and concern only when the police are involved in shootings? When is it we're going to stand up and speak about the things I speak about? That we have situations when we hold these shooters and they're given bail in 24 hours, or that even found guilty, there's a $5,000 fine. Or we have situations when it is that illegal drug weapons can be entering through the legitimate ports of entry and we have no say in the matter. Or when persons just do not want, or persons based on fear or reprisal, they do not want to give information. Instead of everyone trying to play this game of let's see if we could blame the police for everything, maybe it is we should start looking in the mirror and understanding what the issue is. I could put my head on a block on two matters today. I could bet if the police were involved in that shooting by some way, say for example, heaven forbid, someone shot at the police and the police fired back and that 2-year-old child was killed in the crossfire, there will be all hell to pay. And there will be hundreds of witnesses that would have automatically turned up. But because the police were not involved in that situation, no one sees anything, no one saw anything. Right? And that is what usually happens. But if the police are involved, all of a sudden people see everything. And I could bet you something else as well. I can bet that if the police hunt down that individual, and we intend to hunt him down and find him, that if that individual has that same firearm in his possession that he used to kill a 2-year-old child, and he uses that weapon to try to point it at police officers, and police officers in that armed conflict in minimum use of force shoot at that individual and he is killed, you will hear more aggression, more hurt, more pain of the police killing a killer than the killer having killed a 2-year-old child. So the police would have, a killer would have killed a 2-year-old child and not one person. All of a sudden, you're not hearing people shouting, call their name, call her name. You're not hearing that. Names must only be called if the police are involved. But I could assure you if the police confront this individual and he meets his demise and he is killed, you're going to hear all sorts of different stories. The lady with the towel is going to come out and bawl, the police too wicked. Persons will claim that the man was not doing anything, he was unarmed. And you will hear all of the witnesses, all the hate, all the pain being targeted towards the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Maybe, just maybe, if for once people decide to look and understand that the police service is not the enemy, but again, negativity sells. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we take this opportunity today to inform the public that we are putting out a $25,000 reward for information that can assist us in trying to pinpoint the perpetrator of that heinous act whereby the 2-year-old was killed along with her father. So it's a $25,000 reward, and you can actually send forward the information to Crime Stoppers. $25,000 reward. As I move on, before I would like to spend more time with the media to ask questions today. There was an editorial I saw recently where they were speaking about the lack of public trust of the police service. Well, I do not know if the editorial and the newspaper is aware that the public trust and confidence in the police service increased from 14% to 30% in the last year and a half. So they could put that in a pipe and smoke it. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we are definitely not perfect, but we are getting there. So I think instead of worrying about the ratings of the police service, the newspaper should worry about their own ratings. If it is that there's a weak criminal justice system, if there's easy access for persons to get bail, if there's fear of reprisal, if there's a concern by persons linked that see that there may be others linked to criminal activities, whether it be persons in the court, police officers, or even the community, all of these things play a very big part why these persons would be reluctant to come forward and give information. But the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we are here about building trust. And that is why it is that I mentioned there's a 14 to 30% increase in the public trust and confidence in the police service. We have systems through the online reporting, the police app, 482 Gary, to be able to find ways for the public to come forward and give information. This is where it is we ask about. We are not the enemy. We are here to help the citizens of this great country. And if you see something, say something. But as I said, the negativity sells. And that cannot be right. Maybe, if it is that those who write articles and editorials to be right, look, let's get sensational. If it is we just look at what the police service they have done and achieved over the last few years, where they're putting their lives on the line, they are going out there every single day, prepared to give their life, the ultimate sacrifice for this country. Look at how they operated for COVID-19. They were there out there, putting their lives on the line and taking back something that could easily go back into their family. And instead of anyone just saying, thank you, no. It is to find every single avenue to discredit. And again, that is their right. But maybe sometimes a little bit of showing that, listen, we appreciate what it is that you all have done. You could attack me, but don't attack my officers unfairly when it is not required. I now move on to the final 2 points. Pertaining to a recent court ruling. And we do not want to say much as that matter is before the court, but it has to do with a situation whereby as the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Commissioner, I am aware that one of the biggest concerns that the public had was lack of confidence in the police service. They felt that police officers could do what they want. They were concerned about rogue elements. I have set a standard for this police service, and I'm looking at international best practice. And I would say and continue to do what is required. And if I have to do what is required to remove the rogue elements from the police service, I will do what is required. And I would continue to do so. In the United States, we've seen police officers recently being fired for much less than murder. But here, when it is that I decide to ask, just simply ask a police officer, why do you think that you should not be removed? I have been directed and it's been said that no, the police officer has a right to remain as a police officer. The concept of innocent until proven guilty, that is definitely for the court. But here, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, I am setting a standard and ensuring that conduct for such actions via charges being laid for violent crime, murders, rape, kidnapping. I do not think those individuals belong in the service. The police are expected to be of a higher standard, and that I intend to do. But so be it. If it is that the justice system says that if someone commits murder and they demand that I promote them to DCP, I will do so. My point is I will continue to try my best to ensure a high degree of discipline. So to the express that said Gary was shut down, Gary certainly wasn't shut down. Gary did what was required. Gary was bold enough to do what needed to be done to clean up the police service. Gary said what it is the public wanted. Gary did what the public demanded to remove rogue elements of the police service. Gary can actually sleep good at night knowing that he did what was required. I hope others could do the same. We could just relate to the Minneapolis situation. Just say now, based on what it is we're hearing, if a police officer decides tomorrow put his knee on the neck of someone in this country and kills that person, and that person is now charged for murder, I am being told that that person should not be removed and fired from the police service. Interesting. I will now ask the head of legal, Mr. Chandler, to say a few words on this matter, please.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Trinidad and Tobago. As Commissioner alluded to, we don't want to say too much because, ironically, the matter is still sub judice. And when I say sub judice, it means that the matter is still currently before the court. Now, it appears to me that when I look at the various headlines, particularly in recent times, it seems like sensationalism is the new norm for journalism. And I say that because when we look at today's headlines, Gary shut down, it gives the impression and the false impression as though some substantive decision was made. But in truth and in fact, that is not the position. An injunction was filed by the applicants on the 9th of May. It was granted. But there was no hullabaloo when the injunction was granted. Now let us understand what an injunction is. An injunction is an interim relief, an interim remedy to either mandate or to prohibit someone or parties from doing or forbearing from doing something. So the fact of the matter is that this is just an interim relief that was granted, and all that came yesterday was a decision of the court. Now let's understand what's happening. The court just made a decision to allow the injunction to continue. The matter is still before the court. The matter is set for trial in August, right? And whether the decision of the court, whether we agree or we disagree, and where we go from there, that is something else that we are traversing. But nonetheless, the fact of the matter is that this matter is still before the court. So the concept and the perception that is being advanced is not one that the matter has been determined, but it's just simply an injunction, and the matter is still there before the court to be dealt with. So I want to make sure that we understand that that is the position, and this was done in pursuance of what the Commissioner has advanced in terms of dealing with officers, whether it's rogue officers, whether officers have been charged with serious offenses. We intend to deal with matters, but within the law. And I want to make that clear because people have advanced their own objectives, their own notions and own beliefs. But what we are doing is within the confines of the law. And part of that would have been to write to people to ask them why they should not be dismissed. But it is by no means a decision. But again, I have to be careful, so I want to limit and be guarded in what I say and stop there.
Thank you. So as I said, Gary Griffith wasn't shut down. The country was shut down. That's just to clarify with the Express. I did what was required and I will continue to do what was required. The country demands that the police service is cleaned up, and I have to clean it up. And my stance is similar to what we've seen in Minneapolis and Atlanta recently. A police officer charged for murder, he is immediately fired. Here, everything must go through the court, and it will spend months, and fair enough. If it is that the Express sees that as me being shut down, I wasn't shut down. I do what is required. I'm not here to make friends. I'm not here to win votes. I'm here to do a job. And if my job entails to ensure that police officers, if the very few rogue elements, if they're out there, if police officers are involved in violent crime and charged, and you want to speak about, well, he has not yet been found guilty, it means that if what happened in Minneapolis took place in Trinidad and Tobago, we are trying to say that that officer should still be a police officer. That's what we are trying to say. So we intend to do exactly what the court has mandated, but I will continue to operate as a commissioner of police to try to clean up the police service. The fact of the matter is the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, our officers come from society, but we expect it to be at a higher standard. So this is not about waiting on the courts to decide. My impression is that if it is that certain actions have been taken that can affect the image of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, I need to act. How would the public feel if it is that they know that we have persons who are charged for murder, rape, kidnapping, and we still see it fit for those persons to remain as police officers? So I have a job to do, the court has they will have their job to do, and we will adhere to the rulings of the court. As we move to the final point, in that same Express headline, again with Gary shut down, there was a comical, hysterical article in the front page of the Express that it involved a situation with a police officer when it is that he was barred from entering the police academy. And the Express, in a very immature manner, without getting the facts, obviously, unfortunately, they state that the police officer barred from the police academy after a critical online post. One thing had absolutely nothing to do with the other. The Express front page was totally false, misleading. I wouldn't say mischievous, I just say they didn't get it right yet again. The fact of the matter is that I never even knew who was this individual. I never saw the article in my life. And just common sense, by all of those who love to put things on social media, common sense. If someone actually makes a negative comment that is against police regulations, and he puts it on social media, why would we ban him from one police station out of over 100? What was the reason to ban him from the police academy based on him making a comment on social media? That alone shows that the Express obviously didn't think it through. The fact of the matter is that this individual I found out about it based on the Express actually contacted me, because the head of the Police Training Academy, he made a decision, and he has a right to, because there's a high degree of discipline and standard that must be in that Police Training Academy. He saw certain things that took place involving an individual, and he took decisive action. That was all it was. I never knew the individual. I do not know who he was. I never saw what he ever put online. It is irrelevant to me. The decision was made based on specifically on actions that took place within the police academy, and the police academy made a decision. But yet, the Express, in a way to find an avenue to let's see how many newspapers we could sell today, let's throw that on the front page with a false, misleading, mischievous headline that had absolutely nothing of substance in relation to what it is that they placed. So I will now ask Mr. Norton, the head of the Police Training Academy, to clarify the matter, please.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, members of the media, and by extension, Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah, I'll use the Commissioner's comment as a segue to get into my contribution today. But before I start my contribution, I just want to set the context concerning the Police Academy. Now, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Academy, our vision is to be the Academy of Excellence in law enforcement, education, and training locally and regionally. Now, when we look across the 28 Caribbean states, what is unique about us as an academy is the fact that we is the only academy among those 28 Caribbean states that is registered with an accredited body as compared to the other countries. A lot of them have memorandum of understanding with academic institutions, etc., similarly to us, but we are the only registered academy across the region. And what is critical about that is that we must maintain high standards in order, because to maintain registration, the standard must be maintained. And at the Police Academy, we are responsible for training persons in the first instance, persons who come off the street as civilian and come into the academy to be trained. So a high degree of discipline and ethical and moral standards must be maintained. Now, to the substantive issue, based on the article that was written in the newspaper, I just want to put some clarity to it. I will state from the onset that the document that was revealed, unfortunately, was leaked, was a document that I, as the head of the academy, would have distributed to all the department heads to address an alleged breach that would have occurred involving the named individual that was on the article and the specific media house. And why that became important is because an investigation was launched based on an alleged breach that would have occurred on the 12th day of June 2020. However, I was surprised when I saw the headline in terms of the title of the article, which for some reason or the other was associated with a post that this individual would have made on the 11th of June. And this incident, which I would have launched the investigation with, would have occurred on the 12th. So that association was saying that because of an online post that spoke to certain aspects of the police service and the commissioner, that action was taken by me. So let me put it on the public record that is incorrect. There's no association. What I could say, an incident would have occurred. Now, in the police academy and the police service by extension, we have our primary legislation, but we have subordinate legislations which emanate from that primary legislation, and as a consequence, there were some breaches that would have occurred on that particular day by the named individual, and as a consequence, I had to take the action that I would have taken to institute an investigation against the individual. To ensure that the investigation is not tarnished in any way, I had to prohibit the individual's entry to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Academy, because one of the things that we have to take into consideration also is that at present we have 196 persons who are training in the academy, and as a consequence we must insulate them from any type of activity that might potentially place them in harm's way. So there's nothing with respect to the article, with the post that the individual would have made with Ttps and the action that I would have taken at the police academy. So let's set the record right, straight, that there's no relationship between my action and the post that was made online. And what I want to also say is that there's nothing, it is unfortunate that this could have leaked and it went viral on social media. However, my action was in no way intended to embarrass the individual named in any way. But an investigation is ongoing and he has to be debarred entry to the compound.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. And again, going back to the actual correspondence, I saw it on social media. I was not even aware. And I then contacted Mr. Norton to find out what was the reason for this. And when I got the whole rundown of what transpired, when the media contacted me to avoid embarrassing the police officer, my comments were clear. When I told, I think both Newsday and Express, they asked for a comment. I said this is a confidential matter. It's unfortunate that it has gone public. It is a matter that is being dealt with through the Police Training Academy. And because of that, the Express decides to run and take something that has absolutely nothing to do with the issue. And I think that is very unfortunate. This childish witch hunt of just trying to find things with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to play the game of, aha, I catch you, is really getting a little boring now. Is there anything else that could be done other than be just bashing the police service? What about thank you? What about congratulating the police officers for their performance over the last 3 months? But it's always a headline. So Gary shut down. Gary wasn't shut down. Gary did what was required. I could hold my head high to show that I did what was required to clean up the police service. And I would continue to do so again. If anyone has an issue, that I as the Commissioner of Police, I am saying that I have an issue if persons are charged for murder, rape, kidnapping, or violent crime, that they should not be police officers. If persons have a different opinion, well, so be it. I stand on it, and the same situation as what took place in Minneapolis and Atlanta. If persons have a difference in opinion, they are basically stating that the police officers in Minneapolis and Atlanta should not be fired because you have to wait until the court, until they are guilty. Until then, they're still innocent, so they should remain as police officers. Let's not be a hypocrite here. However, having said that, I wish to also note that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we are expected to be at a higher standard. The concept that people believe that the police officers can say and do anything that they want, that is totally inaccurate. There's a certain stipulation, rules, and guidelines in the police regulations that cannot allow us to do anything that the average citizen can do. And there's a reason for that. A police officer has enormous authority, tremendous power. They can take away your freedom. So we have to be very clear to ensure that a police officer, when they perform their duty, it must not in any way be seen that that officer, we have to make sure that he is not impartial and that he will be doing all that is required. And that he is neutral, transparent, and making sure that all decisions made, there's not in any way something being a police officer being vindictive, arrogant, or even politically affiliated. Mr. Chandler, you'd like anything to clarify on this, please?
Commissioner, thank you. I just want to reiterate what I said last week, because last week we would have addressed the issue of Section 138, Sections 137, when it speaks to police officers making political comments and public comments. And I do so based on what Mr. Norton has just alluded to, that clearly there's a distinction between what has transpired. Clearly something would have transpired at the academy, which he dealt with, and subsequently the officer, for one reason or the other, took to Facebook and made a public post. Let's understand what's happening here. We've spoken about this already, about police officers putting into the public domain and the public space what are their thoughts, their opinions. They are restricted from doing so by virtue of the police service regulations. And I again reiterate this to the public and to police officers. You cannot go about just saying as you please. The fact of the matter is, look, you're entitled to your own thoughts, your own opinions, and you can do so in your private sphere, in your private space. But when it comes to putting posts out there, you cannot do so publicly. And this is a clear instance of an officer going and making whatever statements. Now, perhaps in the mind of the officer, that because from everything that we've learned, the officer is on pre-retirement, what we call pre-retirement leave. Pre-retirement leave is vacation leave prior to your retirement from the police service. So let's understand what's happening here. Not because you're going on pre-retirement leave means that you're out of the service. You're on vacation leave prior to your retirement from the police service. So you are very much still a police officer and subject to the laws of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Act and the Police Service Regulations. So I want to make that abundantly clear. Yes, Commissioner?
Okay, yeah. And again, so before I open to the media, again, I want to clarify what Mr. Chandler is speaking about is that the police officer cannot just make any comment in public to discredit, say, the government, the opposition, be political, or even or the police service. And if persons have an issue with that, is because obviously you do not have the ability, capability, understanding, or professionalism to wear a uniform, to understand the difference between that of a civilian to that of someone in uniform. There's a high standard that is expected. And please do not get me wrong. The last thing, if anyone knows Gary Griffith, I do not need to try to have a clandestine attempt to take any action on anyone. I go frontal, straight in your face. I do not need to use the academy to try to find some avenue. Because the stupidity of the Express, someone made an online statement, so you're banned him from the academy? No, he was banned from the academy because of the actions that we have reports on. And it affected many of the recruits who protested and were very concerned about it. So the Express should get your facts straight before making lies to try to discredit me because of the excitement to sell newspapers. The fact of the matter is that there are one or two officers, in fact, who have made very serious comments that are being dealt with. And I could give you the assurance that if and when decisive action is taken and disciplinary action is taken, if it is that these officers had crossed the line, I will be the first one to tell you that I did it. And I will not have to use anybody because I ain't afraid of nobody. So the fact of the matter is I have respect for everyone and I will come straight up, real close and personal, to tell you that I have made this decision. That is what leadership is about. Leadership is not for me to be a wimp, and if someone says something, try to use some sort of a backdoor approach to take action on someone. The Express, the leaders of the Express, maybe that is how you think, not me. If it is I have to take action on anyone, I will come forward and let it be known to the public that this action was taken and I stand firm by my actions. That is what leadership is about. So this decision, this comment made by the Express, it was false, misleading, mischievous, and it was a lie. I never saw this until after it came out on social media. And up to now, I still have not seen the comments made on social media. And even those comments, I certainly wouldn't have seen it as being an avenue to want to take action on an individual because of it. And just before I open to the media, again, I want to re-emphasize a reward of $25,000 is being offered for information which can lead to the arrest and the charging of the suspect or suspects responsible for the death of 2-year-old Aria Jaggernaut and her father, which occurred on the Friday, the 19th of June. Members of the public with credible information on this matter are asked to contact Crime Stoppers or 800 TIPS. That's 800-8477. And just before, again, I continue to ask the country, please understand the police service, we are not the enemy, we are doing our best. I am doing my best to clean up the police service. In 2019, 37 officers have been charged. 2020, 12. Police officers suspended last year, 73, 8 so far this year. And over 120 police officers, their matters have gone to the DPP in the last 2 years. You're speaking about every week we send a police officer to report. So we intend to clean up the police service. If there are certain obstacles based on our culture, based on the perception of what has happened in the past, I intend to open that Pandora's box and clean up this police service, whilst at the same time, I will jealously guard and defend the image of the police service and not have anyone try to discredit the police service because of your exuberance to want to sensationalize situations that do not exist. And now open to the media, please.
Good morning, gents. 11 Newsday. Mr. Norton, could you give us a list of offenses that someone could commit that would bar them from accessing the academy?
Could you just see my examples?
There are many offenses that, if someone commits it, there would be debarred entry. So, for example, we have what you call the policy documents. We have specific policy documents that guides our operations at the academy. So, to respond to your question frontally, a simple breach of one of our policies that relates to time, being your time entry and exit from the academy. There are certain persons who there are certain time limits in which specific things are to occur. And if a breach occurs that is outside a specific timeline set for a specific area, that is a breach that could debar someone from entry. You see, because one of the important things that we must recognize is that at present, we have recruits in the police academy. And as a result of having recruits, they basically, for the period of time that they are assigned to the academy, myself as head of the academy is vicariously responsible for everything that happens there. So I have to ensure that all our quality standards are met and kept so that no one could be placed in harm's way, because ultimately I will be held accountable.
Yeah, and if I could also, again, as it pertains to recruit training, there's a reason why it is that recruits, they are put in an isolated environment away from regular officers, whether the military or even the police service, for obvious reasons. You don't want them to get bad habits, or for those officers to be able to rub shoulders with them and give them the wrong perception of certain things. So that is why it is that police training academy is something that is isolated to make sure that the recruits will not pick up the bad habits even before they graduate. So when it is that decisions are made and we start hearing that recruits are being involved and sometimes even targeted by individuals outside of the instructors of the police training academy, there must be a reason for concern.
Sticking with that, either Commissioner or Mr. Norton, could you just explain? Now, I think it's either Commissioner or Mr. Norton would have said that this incident happened on June the 11th and you made a decision on June the 12th, yes?
No, let me clear that up. Based on the article written on a media house today, I learned of a post that the individual made on the 11th. However, the breach for which I initiated the investigation at the police academy would have occurred on the 12th. So what the article would have alluded to is that as a consequence of the incident that would have happened, the post that the individual would have made on the 11th was the reason for the action that I took on the 12th. But I only became aware of that action on the 11th in terms of the post when I read the newspaper this morning.
Okay. Now, my follow-up question is, because I just wanted to clarify that, part of the banning was specifically the armory. Is it that this officer in question is violent towards his fellow officers and or the recruits, hence the reason barring him from the armory specifically? No.
Okay, let me just bring some clarity to that, right? Now, the compound of the police academy houses departments of which is not under my remit. So, for example, the Guard and Emergency Branch, the ERP Command Center, the Army was also included in that, because those departments, even though they are housed in the compound of the academy, they are not under my administrative responsibility. So hence the reason why the correspondence was coined in such a way, because I do not have control over those departments, so I cannot debar the individual from entering those departments. But the ban specifically was for all the departments under my remit.
And again, to understand, if it was related to the social media post, why decide to give him leeway for the other things? This had strictly to do with his actions in the academy. I never knew about the actions in the academy until yesterday. I was never aware of the social media posts. But just by how that letter was written, this was not to ban him from anything in the academy. This was done specifically by Mr. Norton looking after the well-being of the recruits in the police training academy. If this was something that was supposed to be vindictive based on someone's comment on social media, he would have been banned from, a letter would have been just put to ban him from even coming in the academy and other police stations as well. So it shows that it confirms that what the Express wrote was a total lie.
Joshua Simongal from Guardian Media.
I was limited to one or two questions. I have some questions for Mr. Chandler regarding the tribunals. How soon can we see them beginning? Specifically of what you said, Commissioner, about unable to dismiss officers? I know the tribunals is one way in which that could be done legally. So how soon can we see these things happening? And are we going to be looking at the 20 officers that you gave the letters to bring first before the tribunal?
All right, so firstly, in terms of how soon, we have just acquired the for the record system, so that in about, I would say, in about 2 weeks, so probably by the second week of June, we should have tribunals beginning. As it pertains to the officers in question, because this matter has become sub judice, and we have the trial coming up in August, it would not be the most sagacious thing to do to interfere with this right now. We go through the process and deal with it, because the court has, there's an injunction there. The injunction was not lifted. So at the end of the day, August is right there. There's no issue to deal with it. So that will be dealt with in time, along with all the other matters in terms of officers who are suspension for disciplinary offenses.
Joshua Simongo from Guardian Media. Commissioner, is it your opinion that the systems in preventing guns from getting into the country through legal ports are failing to serve the interests of a few influential people? And if so, are you confident that you can circumvent the reach that these people have to get your task done, to prevent the amount of guns coming into this country?
Yeah, sure. The answer is we can do a lot more. I know the Minister of National Security. He is very instrumental in trying to deal with this situation. My concern, as I said, is that we have absolutely no involvement at all with what happens in the port. I'll give you an example. If it is that we're involved in hot pursuit of someone and that person gets into the port, we cannot get in there unless we have a warrant. That port is an area that is isolated. It is like an embassy. It becomes a totally different compound outside of the control of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Likewise, if you look at other areas, the Port of Miami and so forth, there are several different law enforcement institutions. So you have one person watching the other. You have the guards guarding the guards. We do not have that. There's no involvement that the SSA, the police service, the Coast Guard, the Army, no one has any interaction or authorization to get and deal with the ports. So with that now, it can make it difficult, and it can provide that product of opportunity. I am strongly recommending that the police must have some involvement to make sure that we can speak, because we have our intelligence officers, we're aware of what takes place, but it becomes virtually impossible if it is that those trucks come outside with those containers and it sends out 2,000 firearms in one container and it is then scattered. That is how serious that port must be. We must have that port foolproof in such a way that we have different arms of the protective services working there to ensure that anything that leaves that legitimate port of entry is properly monitored, and it ensures that the guards can guard the guards.
And have you had initial conversations with the National Security Minister to get jurisdiction at the ports? Some sort of jurisdiction?
Well, no, I don't want to say to her. The Minister of National Security is fully aware of what is required. But remember, the port is not really under the Ministry of National Security. That goes under the Ministry of Works and Transport. It goes under the Ministry of Finance, where customs come under. So this is much more than just the Ministry of National Security. It is a national security concern. It is a police concern, because, as I said, we seize 1,000 firearms annually, but in one night a container can drive out with 2,000 firearms. So what we have achieved in 1 year can be doubled in one night.
And the police, as you've said many times, is always under the microscope when it comes to these topics. And it seems some people have the opinion that the Coast Guard tends to get by without that much attention. What is your opinion? Do you have an opinion on the performance of the Coast Guard with respect to the import of illegal guns? And do you believe they are doing enough? Well,
it is not my place to speak about the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. What I can state is that many persons are not aware of the enormous work being done by the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. They have provided excellent support for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in the performance of our duties as an aid to civil power and to assist us in internal security. The Coast Guard have been very instrumental in many of the raids and the locking down of our borders, the number of persons that have been held on a regular basis. But again, you hold persons with illegal firearms, they get bailed the very next day, they plead guilty and the court will hit them hard with a $5,000 fine for them to go back out. You can't really blame the Coast Guard for that. The Coast Guard have been doing all that is required, especially in the Southwestern Peninsula. They have proven to be very effective. But as I said, the biggest concern that we have found out from our international allies as well is that the legitimate ports of entry is the biggest problem. The Coast Guard has nothing that they could virtually do. When a ship is coming into our port and it lands on the port, the Coast Guard cannot stop a container in the middle of the water, in the middle of the ocean. That lands, and it's when it lands we can now start doing proper searches to make sure that everything inside those containers is there will be no drugs, there will be no weapons, and that's not the responsibility of the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard is there to intercept illegal ports, vessels entering illegally on most occasions, not the legitimate containers that would be, they have their registration and they land. There's nothing that the Coast Guard or the Air Guard can do.
But given the fact that you are aware of this as police commissioner, and I'm sure you would have expressed these concerns to the government, yes, yet this shortcoming exists for decades and it continues. Doesn't this speak to people having influence above that level?
Not at all. I was the Minister of National Security when this was still going on. Sorry, also for me to backtrack, you recall the millions of dollars in cocaine that have been seized recently on ships by the Coast Guard. I think what it is changing times. Sometimes we need to think out of the box. We need to change culture. Even the situation here, it has always been the culture that police officers can say what they want, do what they want, be charged for whatever they want and remain as police officers. I am changing culture. And when I try to shift and open that Pandora's box, people will be offended. But as I said, I am here to see and do what is required, not in any way to disrespect anyone. So this is not a matter of trying to blame government, ministers, the police, the Coast Guard. This is a very delicate situation that has been there for years. That port is something that is taboo. You cannot touch that port. The unions will start to get on. You have institutions that believe that, hey, this is our area, don't touch it. I am stating that if this has become the catalyst towards illegal weapons entering our country, you can't be doing the same thing and expect different results. We need to try to put it similar again to the Port of Miami, where you have the ATF, you have the Border Protection, you have Homeland Security, you have the police, you have the FBI, you have CIA, you have a number of different institutions, covert and overt operators along all of the ports, making sure that anything that enters their country, it is checked thoroughly. They do not care what leaves. They're not going to check. So we have to be responsible for what enters. And I believe that we can do a lot more because, as I said, we keep seizing thousands of firearms. We have seized over 10,000 firearms in the last decade. But if one container comes in, what you probably seize in a decade, you could get in a couple of nights. So this is where it is. We need to shift the operational capability, and I'm just recommending that the police, we are more than prepared to get involved in the ports to find out what is going wrong. That's it. Okay, thank you very much.